So let's just double check that we're still running good here. Yes, we are. Okay, perfect. Now let me play a clip. Let me play this one actually. Let's start here. This was okay. I won't do the deposition right now. What I'll do is I'll play a clip from Jay Weiner. You just mentioned Jay Weiner. I want to get him on the record also. So remember during the Kubrick decodes I did with him 4 or 5 years ago, he did do at that time what I call a mea culpa. He recognized that he also had been duped by both Corey and by David Wilcock, and he expressed his disappointment in himself for being such a great producer, for making Corey Good look good. Now, to some extent, with the trained eyes, as Clif High was saying, it was evident to a lot of people that one, he hadn't been transformed by these events, but two, he seemed to be doing extremely poorly under the flashing lights or the hot lights there of the production studio. And Jay was doing a masterful job retaking and retaking and retaking those clips to make him look good. But I remember watching him crack on his first live episode, Corey Good with what's his name, Jimmy Church, the Fade to Black radio show. There was no edits, and then when he got into his timelines, he was clearly making a lot of mistakes and hesitating. And Jimmy Church had to go and save him during that interview. So you could tell right away, outside of the masterful production of Jay Weidner, this individual was not stepping up here to his narrative. So let's play this first clip here with Jay Weidner. I'll bring this up on the screen here. It's about a 3-minute clip. Hold on. Am I on the right page? No, this one here. Let's play this and we'll come back to the commentary. I'm joined now, of course, with Jay Weidner. You've just received or reviewed the clip of me and Clif High here from September 2020, and I wanted to have this opportunity for Jay, 4 years later, to chime in on that same very subject. So let me ask you, Jay, we talked about in that video clip you doing a mea culpa in terms of the producing scope at Gaia, being fooled in some respect by Corey Good and David Wilcock, and the fact that he appeared more in retrospect to have been data mining a lot of his narrative. What would you say to the audience today, having had 4 more years here to review this process, go through the depositions here with Corey Good? What's the message here in terms of all the deception that is currently ongoing, but seems to be accelerating now with the UAP conference, UFO sightings, and all of this big control over the UFO narrative? So, seeing that there's a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt from your perspective and experience, what do you think is important for the audience to take away today here from this show?
Yeah, I would say to not believe anything without firm evidence. And if you listen to somebody and they're telling you something that sounds fantastic, it probably is fantastic and probably not true. So, I give thanks to Corey Good for giving me a really good bullshit detector and also helping me see kind of the demonic quality that sometimes is in some humans. And so I would say that the number one thing is to pretty much not trust anything that you're hearing, use your discernment, and probably.
No, sweetie, no.
Yeah, let's think about that too, because who was it that brought Corey Good into the Gaia sphere here? And talk about these 20 people who had supposedly vetted him here behind Corey Good.
Yeah, David brought Corey Good in, and we said, well, how do we know he's telling the truth? There's no evidence, there's no witnesses. And he said, well, I ran him through my 20 or so insiders that he had. I never met except one, and the one I met didn't believe Corey, so just put that in. And they all said that he's the real deal. I'm like, okay. Then, so that gave Corey a certain kind of importance. But then Corey masterfully wove in some Sumerian history that would appeal to my boss, and then he wove in the solar flash, which of course was my work on the Cross of Henday, which we all later incorporated into his story later. After he realized he was going to be working with us possibly, he then clearly went back and researched me, found out what I was talking about, and incorporated all of this into his discussion, including the Blue Avians, which weren't in the previous discussion. So what happened is David Wilcock did a 3-hour interview with him at his house in Malibu, and I watched that before I invited Corey in. None of the solar flash was not mentioned, the Blue Avians weren't mentioned, the Sumerian stuff wasn't mentioned, but magically a month later when he arrives at Gaia, he's incorporated the Blue Avians, the solar flash, and the Sumerian stuff, all to appeal to the people that he knew that he was going to be working with, Jay Weidner, my boss, and several other people that have somewhat famous. So
Are we somehow giving him too much credit for this con? Is it possible that within that 20 people who has supposedly vetted him in the background, that there's a nefarious entity, the CIA or other agencies, that might have been plugging all of this to hit you exactly at your weak spot there, both you personally and Gaia personally here, to get this narrative run through your network? Were they part of
I
this?
absolutely think that. That's exactly what I think. I think that there was people involved that were lubing Corey and telling David that he was 100% real, and that when we put our show out, all of a sudden we were everywhere, and we didn't have the advertising budget to be everywhere at Gaia. And I always wondered, how did it happen? How did suddenly, there's 500 websites or 500 people talking about Corey and David, and it always seemed like it was not grassroots but astroturfed. And I think that that's what it was. I don't think that I think that they were part of a massive dirty trick on me and Gaia. to this day. It was meant to hurt us because at the time, as my good friend said, we were punk rock city. They're now easy listening, but at that time, we were really cranking out some serious stuff, and
Right.
it just wasn't allowed. And and soon after David and Corey left Gaia, it was when the crackdown on YouTube and Alex Jones and everybody happens. It's just not. It's all part of this orchestrated thing. It's not part of an isolated. It's not an isolated incident. And even if Corey were useful idiots, they may not even known that they were being manipulated.
Wow. So clearly, it was artificial. Like, you guys had your marketing, your promotional campaigns, but the results of that was like 10-fold or 100 times the result of your marketing campaign. So there's something artificial about it. We're kind of seeing the same thing now in the last couple of days with people taking up Clif High's work all of a sudden, and it's being propagated like crazy. We're like, nobody paid that much attention other than the woo crowd before, but suddenly there seems to be something very unauthentic about it, and that's why we're doing the show here today.
Which I'm not being political. I'm just pointing out that the deception is higher now than I've ever seen it.
Fascinating. Thank you so much for being on here today, Jay. And folks, if you haven't seen it already, Jay's the producer of this brand new documentary called A Clockwork Shining. You don't want to miss that. You can find my decode here with Jay on Rumble. Thank you, Jay, and we'll see you soon. Okay, let me get your first reaction on that one, Clif, as it pertains to the marketing, the fake background, and where things are going right now, and what you're seeing.
Supporting our community starts at home.
So when I first looked into this back in the day, and maybe that was like 2017, I just had a brief glance. I just did a quick background check on Gaia. I didn't know what Gaia was. I had this vague idea of yoga classes. That was about it, right? Anyway, I did an analysis, and you'd be shocked at who owned all the stock. So in my opinion, they may have damaged Jay and Gaia deliberately to do some damage to someone or whatever, but it was also the CIA writing the stock up. Okay, so they created the phenomena of, all right, so in 2002, my data set picked up the flat Earth meme being pumped out of the E-ring of the DoD on the third floor of the E-ring, okay? And so it was an artificial meme created by the Department of Defense. I figured it was for propagation sampling to see how long it took to get into what communities, that kind of thing. And so they're using those same techniques. And they probably had, in 2002, they'd probably decided, okay, blah, 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 we've got this, we've isolated this group. A lot of them are centered around Gaia. And someone in the CIA said, well, we can use Gaia to do this. Someone else said, oh, hey, maybe we can also pick up a little change, right? Let's just pump the hell out of them and then let it flat. And in the meantime, we ride the stock up, sell off at an appropriate point, and book. So I'm of the opinion there was a big chunk of that there, right? How Corey fits in, I don't think he's smart enough. Okay, so if I were the CIA, I wouldn't tell Corey anything because he's going to tell everybody everything just in his body language. And his facial expression and so on. He's extremely readable, as I read him that first time. So I don't think he was clued in. Nobody read Corey into anything relative to the CIA and this pump and dump on the stock that occurred at that time. It was actually, they started selling off, I want to say 2000 and maybe it's 2021. They started really dumping it a lot, right? That's when we see the big stock drop. 2018, I lost a lot of my memory to the anesthesia amnesia. And so I've been building that back over this period of time. So I think Jay's correct. I think the CIA is behind it. The CIA may be very well behind whatever is going on with my social profile at the moment, right? Mm-hmm. I'm very careful at the language I use to try and create certain barriers to such effects. So you're not going to get a lot of Trumpers that are going to go watch my video about how Trump fucks up. And this is deliberate, this kind of a thing, right? I want to try and control shit as much as I can. But it appears we're at that point now. We're at that area now. In my opinion, we're going through this transition period that will affect all of us more than we can imagine now, because of the nature of the changes that are going to be going through our social order relative to us and how we think of our reality and how we think of time. So I always knew back in 1993, when I first had this idea, that at some point the ability to follow the language would impact that the populace becoming aware of their own psychic leaks, and thereafter it's bust. I can't use my system anymore, right? Because it counts on them not being aware that they're leaking out the psychic information. Once they start putting in filters, my technique basically goes away. I think we're very close to that. I think maybe within a year or so.
We also appear close to the point, as you just mentioned a couple of months ago in your video, when Hillary Clinton was out during the campaign saying, hey, we need more censorship, we're losing control. What you were saying is we were crossing this threshold here of this MK Ultra on a mass way to the population to going kinetic, and also this ET fake alien invasion kind of narrative. And here we are today. So before I go too far, and we're going to get to all of that here, guys, today, quite a big slide deck to share with you guys. Jordan, your reaction to what Jay Widener was saying about the artificialness of the people promoting the shows and the episodes. Did you at any time in your experience working with this group feel also that perhaps there was another unseen hand behind you guys kind of pushing you in certain directions and promoting certain directions, even though it didn't feel organic to you? Did you have that feeling?
Yeah, well, Corey has his story that he was given these DIA documents before they came out publicly. I don't remember when they came out publicly. Maybe it was 2019, 2020. But Corey claims that he had an insider give him these DIRD documents 2017 timeframe. And going along with what Cliff said there, Corey claims that he was given them by an alliance insider to, give him credibility and put them out publicly and everything. But I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, it's probably some deep state black suit that dressed himself up to look like a white hat, giving him the documents, give Corey a false sense of credibility or false sense of self, and then give the followers of Corey a false sense of credibility in Corey as well. So it's very possible that that went down that way. Also, I went to meet, I mentioned earlier, I went to meet two insiders that Corey and David claimed were alliance insiders, in contact with them. In 2018, I was invited to fly out with Corey and a couple of other people on Corey's team flew to New York, and then we drove to somewhere in Pennsylvania. I don't know exactly where in Pennsylvania, but I spent a couple days with two of these so-called insiders. And at first, I'm like, okay, maybe these guys are legit. It was a man and a woman. The man showed a binder of his military certifications, and he was former military. The woman claimed to be former CIA, but I don't know about that. So, okay, I'll see what they have to say. But after a couple of days, there was nothing that led me to believe. I think David was claiming that these two individuals wrote reports and they wrote briefings for Trump and all this stuff. No, I doubt it. I think that they just wanted to run some money-making scheme and use Corey and David as their avenue to create a survivalist company or something like that, sell courses. And one more thing, we were talking about Corey data mining his narratives and then just finding stuff on the internet and running with that publicly.
Well, there is a lot of discussion about him mining Project Avalon at the time, and a lot of people in that community also had brought that up. Keep going, Jordan.
Yeah, Project Avalon. I don't doubt that. I love Stargate SG-1. That's one of my favorite TV shows. I've watched it probably 5 or 6 times through. And there's a few things in Stargate SG-1, which came out in 1999 and ended in 2008 or something like that. And there's a lot of things that happen in Stargate SG-1 that kind of very close to Corey's story. But I was the first person on YouTube to be reporting on Q, and that was one of my big things going through 2018, 19, 20 that I reported on aside from the UFO stuff. Now, at the end of 2019, early 2020, when I really started questioning Corey and David, one of those things you asked me earlier, what made me want to break away from those guys? And another one of those things was they would keep telling me things were going to happen with Q. I think Corey was telling me like, yeah, they're going to fold Q and blame it on a hacker and it's going to end up, none of that happened. But I just got the feeling that because I was getting a lot of traction from reporting on Q, that's why they kept me around so they could use that influence to promote their own crap.
Right.
And
Now,
they were
what I'm
Go-
hearing in all of this, it appears that there's two angles at play. You both mentioned the money making machine, so people were intent on using this narrative for their own personal gains and making money. And it appears that there's another entity involved using this narrative or this limited hangout to move the conversation away from true disclosure into perhaps into, I guess, more control and more secrecy around the whole subject. So on one hand, we're being told that we're looking at disclosure, but really, they're
Yeah.
just putting us away from the true things and giving us more secrecy. Now,
Let's
go ahead.
not forget Catherine Austin Fitts also, and
All of the money.
and
Yeah.
Richard Dolan. No, not the money
Oh.
aspect. The fact that they were on the course for true disclosure. They were coming up with the black projects, getting all the names, all of this kind of stuff. And then the CIA decided to bring Corey up and they insisted that the secret space program stuff, those conferences, take Corey in and accept his testimony, right? And Catherine and Richard Dolan, who called Richard Dolan's got, he's got brass balls, dude. He called him out on stage,
Yeah.
and they wouldn't have it. Okay, but it caused their factual based, hard-headed accounting, all of the boring insurance stuff, all of this kind of stuff, examination of the secret space program. And instead we got fantasy.
Right, exactly. That's what I meant about following the money, because I remember one of her earlier testimonies where she was saying that as she was investigating this disappearing money, she was always but
right.
into the ET file. So for her, it was very much connected. And you're right, they moved her off the stage so that we didn't look at the books, and perhaps we're leaking off planet some of these resources to then have this fantasy world. Now, Clif,
okay, wait a second. Let me intrude. Okay, because this is slightly annoying. Okay,
right.
So if you are a space guy and you're in one of these little pop here, pop there kind of UFOs that use the other physics, you're never going to take anything off of this planet unless it is biological or it was made by a biological and thus has some cachet to it. So you might take an artifact that was created by humans back to show your bros on wherever, right? But you're not going to take any other material from our planet because you can make that stuff in a more pure form through energy.
I was talking about the money leaving our enclosed system to fund the what we call the breakaway civilization.
Okay, sure.
So in that way, we're leaking off. In that way, we are leaking off world with our early space programs. I'm not talking about the ETs here. Okay, so you ate a lot of shit for basically calling out Corey Goode from the onset of his appearances on Cosmic Disclosure, and that led to all of these lawsuits, him saying that you were defaming him. And in this particular deposition, this is where the mic dropped for most of the community who were paying attention. So I'm going to play maybe 2 minutes from this, and then we'll come back to the vindication here and where we move forward in this narrative of control.
My question. The Anshar are a creation.
Not my question. My question is, can anyone else communicate to Anshar
To something I created?
other than through you?
That's something I created. That's something I trademarked? That's part of my trademark? No.
Okay, so the only people who can communicate to Anshar are you, correct?
It's a part of my meditative process.
Okay.
If someone wants to create up a meditative process where they're talking to the Anshar, there's nothing that stops that, and they will believe it, and that will allow them in their higher self to connect. It's a tool.
So someone else could connect to Anshar as well and have an experience with Anshar as well.
If they imagined it so, but if they decided to go out and do a television show about it or write a book about it, they might have a problem.
But can't they have their own? They couldn't write about their own experience.
Their own experience with something. I mean, okay, it would be the same as a Star Wars character.
No, but if someone else has an experience or had a meditative state, can't they communicate and talk about their experience?
Well, they can communicate and talk about whatever they want. This is America.
Sure.
But if they went out and said that Han Solo was giving them information in their dreams or in their meditations, and they started writing books about it, guess who's going to come and sue them?
So you're saying that this Anshar, it's real, it exists as far as you're concerned, and that you communicate with Anshar, correct?
It is a meditative tool that I use. And a lot of my...
You're not answering.
I am answering your question.
Is it real or not?
It is not physically real. It was
Okay. That's as much as I can stomach.
I know.
But needless to say, for the people who are hearing this for the first time, they had to watch this and go back and say, oh shit, Clif, I'm sorry. I called you an asshole for all these years for calling out this guy. Here he is on the stand admitting that most of it, if not all of it, was fabricated, and that he's including this now in his IP, in his intellectual property, and he's wanting to sue anybody who talks about these particular subjects because they're for him to move forward in economic growth type of fashion. What was your first reaction when you saw this deposition? Clif, let me start with you.
Well, see, it was all sort of old news to me because I didn't care. I won the lawsuit against Corey, right? And because I won, I resolved it the way I wanted to. Now, and I had always known that he was lying about these experiences, that they were all fantasy. So it wasn't like a big shock that he had to admit under oath that they were a fantasy. It is just gratifying, I guess, to see him squirm trying to, not do that, to not admit that he lied about it all.
Okay, so it was comic relief for you, but at the same time, it was a news to you. Let me ask you the same thing, though, Jordan. Listening to this now, having gone through being part of Corey's kids, the whole narrative, having spent a lot of your time and energy supporting this and supporting disclosure, only to be let down and by seeing this guy fall on his sword. What was your reaction to all of that?
It was entertaining, knowing how Corey operates with what he's always trying to get people to think, and he likes to compartmentalize. So he'll tell this person this so they can think a certain thing, and this person this, or these people this, so they can. He's always trying to get people to like him and support his narratives. And I could tell watching that deposition that Corey, being the strategic thinker he is, I'm not saying he's effective in that, but he's always trying to figure out what to say to people to get them to do what he wants them to do. I could tell he's sitting there thinking to himself, well, if I say it's real and I actually did a 20 and back and I'm talking to these aliens, the judge and the lawyer and the jury, they're all going to think I'm crazy. So what narrative am I going to fabricate so the judge and the jury and the lawyer don't think I'm nuts, but I can still win this lawsuit, right? And I guess that was the best that he could do, call it figment of his imagination. And he's stuck between a rock and a hard place there. Does he straight up say yes?
It's a hell of a tightrope to walk, yeah.
Yeah. Does he say yes, it's actually real?
Yeah.
But the judge and the jury and the lawyer are going to think is nuts. Or does he say it's a figment of my imagination, and then here we are on the internet making fun of him for it, right? So it's real tightrope to walk.
Right. Now, I want to get into the bullying aspect. So, to some extent, Jordan, Clif, and also myself here, we were bullied online for simply asking questions about this individual and the story that he was proposing. We wanted to know, and we wanted to dig, and we wanted to have more information and validation. As Jay Widener was saying, this is very much our obligation to do so. But we were very much bullied for doing that. In your cases, you were sued. In my cases, I got all these trolls on my comment sections, just like I did last week when we were questioning this QFS and Nasera narrative timeline. We seem to be always facing that same type of divide and conquer tactic here online, where we have people just bitching at us and shutting down conversation and not making it possible for us to even ask questions, right? So explain your experience with that bullying. When did it start for you? I'm assuming as soon as you started leaving the cult here. And what did that bullying look like, and how deep and pervasive was it? Because some people watching this on our show might say, oh, JC, those are just normal viewers, they're sharing their comments. Well, some of them might be, but there's a bigger orchestration at play in the background. I want your first thoughts on that, Jordan, and then we'll ask Clif the same thing.
Yeah, it's just people getting their cognitive dissonance pinged. So they're upset that something they want to believe in really bad is getting questioned by folks on the internet, folks on videos. And there's a lot of new age bullshit, we could call it new age gaslighting, where if you question somebody, if you expose scammers, then you're bashing, you're hating, you're dividing. We don't want that negativity, they call it. We just want positivity around here.
Yeah.
Well, good and bad, just depends on perspective, just depends on how you frame it, right? I think it's good to call out con artists and scammers, and good to wake up to that. And at the beginning of this show, we talked about change. It's good to change. Your thoughts and opinions should change over time as you investigate new things and start to wake up, right? So those who hold the exact same beliefs that they did 10, 15, 20 years ago, might be something going on there. So
speak about the pervasiveness, though, in the background of the channels being used to seek or people out, to dox them, and this whole control apparatus that was not organic, but that was very much derived by the people you were calling out. What did that look like? What was that mechanism?
right. So any of these disinformation narratives that you begin calling out, whether it's the fake UFO clickbait conspiracy stuff, I noticed this a lot over the past few years, exposing flat earth nonsense, quantum financial system / Nazara stuff, and any of these conspiracy disinfo narratives. If you start questioning them, you will get a huge contingent of probably a few actual humans, but also a lot of AI bots, like these networks coming out to attack you. On Twitter right now, it's pretty bad. There's a lot of sock puppet disinfo accounts that are trying to attack General Michael Flynn or Koch Patel or what have you. And if you question them, then you just get this huge swarm of probably a few paid shills mixed in with AI bots helping to amplify their content. But no doubt, I mean, they're really trying to shut down any kind of dissent. So
didn't it come out in the background also that some of these group members were actually communicating with each other on secret Facebook accounts, Facebook accounts, to actually seek out and hurt people and dox them? Let's speak about that, Cliff, here also.
Sure. Jordan wasn't part of that. He was basically, in my opinion, I don't think he was aware of what was going on that way. We had evidence that we got off of Twitter and Facebook that showed that there was a planned effort directed by Corey. It went through this woman, I can't remember her name. She was the wrangler. At one point, she had like 13 people under her. They were all given orders to get X number of accounts set up and this sort of thing.
Was that Joy?
Yeah, that was it. Yep. And they coordinated the attacks against us. This led to people physically showing up here where I live, way the hell out, and my having confrontations with followers of Corey's. Okay. And maybe there were agent provocateurs that wanted me to think they were followers of Corey. Okay. That also could be a possibility in this one instance, but it led to me having to file sheriff's reports to people on the property and to assaults on the beach and this sort of thing, right? So there was an active campaign to damage the individuals at any level they could that had questioned Corey. And this is why I think CIA was involved. There was all kinds of nasty, dirty tricks there and threats. Next time I go, it'll probably take, but I'm starting to get really well. And at the time in 2019, I was really, really, really pissed. And so I was just going about armed and I was practicing. So, if you got within 80 feet of me, certainly I would hit you, no question, right? Even at 80 yards, I'd probably take you down. So I was sort of looking for that because there were so many of these people. They'd show up at my front gate. They had maneuvered some of the locals to harass me. It was an organized campaign. Online, it was quite extensive. That was the first time I'd ever had to block anybody on Twitter. I just don't normally care about trolls and this sort of thing, and I didn't use Twitter that way. And then in the 2018-19, I get into this fight with Corey and all of his people, and it starts affecting other aspects in the sense that I knew Jay Widener way the hell back when, right? And all of a sudden, I'm now at loggerheads with him, and he's my enemy because he's being coerced and forced into actions to support this butthead Corey Good. So so I would also caution Jordan to making an assumption that any of these trolling actions are in any way organic. All right, so here's something about Corey Good. All right, I'm not a professional. This is just my opinion. I think that Corey Good's deposition had no thinking involved in it at all. That I think what you're watching there is a collapse of a a persona down to the very core of that persona, the last little bit that can hang on. This is, in my opinion, a psychopathic episode, a psychotic episode where he's facing that judge and he can't get out. He's squirming, he's turning, he's trying to get away. His mind is reeling, it's collapsing, each layer is going. He's not thinking about the judge and the jury. If he had thought about the judge and the jury ahead of time, he would have just maintained that all of this was 100% factual, that it was all 100% believable, and don't give a rat's ass if you think the judge and the jury think you're crazy, because that will not stop them from siding with you in a lawsuit, because they're not considering whether or not he's crazy. They were only considering the facts of the lawsuit. So in my opinion, Corey's personality is such that his mind saw this as a test of his illusionary veracity for this illusionary world that part of his personality had constructed. And that when it was assaulted, it just kept collapsing and collapsing and collapsing. I saw a video of him recently, and he looks very bad. Okay, I mean, he looks like a man.
He looks like he did Ozempic for a few years.
Well, okay, and that may be the case. And maybe he's suffering some kind of drug-related problem as a result of that. But indeed, I think that his mind is still suffering this level of collapse. And so it wouldn't be good to be around the guy, I'm quite certain. But also, I think that they did organize all this.
I do have an experience to share.
Go ahead.
I also want to say, tangent here, Corey and David aren't the only UFO conspiracy clickbait scammers. There's a lot of them that have been inserted onto Twitter, Rumble, etc., claiming they're in contact with the Galactic Federation or whistleblowers or did 20 backs and all of that. So there's, Cliff saying it's coming from the CIA. You probably are very correct. There's a huge contingent of them, but Corey and David are just the most popular ones. And I think they're suffering from massive delusions of grandeur, and it's bad. But anyway, in terms of the doxing, I did have an experience. I was at Corey's house this is either 2018 or 2019. And, thankfully I might've been young and dumb, but I wasn't that dumb to get caught into all that doxing crap. I stayed very far away with it, but the closest I got to it, I remember Corey pulled out his phone. This is when he was beefing with Bill Ryan. And he showed me this video. I think Bill Ryan was somewhere in Central America at the time. And he goes, Jordan, look at this. And it was a video of Bill Ryan's house that was taken by somebody or something. And Corey's like, I know people, trying to build himself up as being somebody with connections or anything. And that was really weird to me, like showing me a video of a guy's house just because you guys are beefing on the internet. And that was odd. And from what I understand, Corey, I guess, found the neighbor and wired the neighbor money for the neighbor just to take that video and send it to him. So it was, the lengths that he would go to do this sort of stuff and all that doxing. Yeah, it was.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And folks, we're still in the part of looking backwards here at the tactics that are being used against us. And we're doing that for a specific reason here, so that we have maybe more tips and tools to recognize that moving forward, specifically now in this crazy period of time of transition that we're in, where everybody seems to be vying for our attention and this narrative of control being in full force. Now, Cliff and I, again, ate a lot of shit last year when I produced some of these videos where Cliff was also talking about Mauro Biglino's book, The Naked Bible, and the whole background of the Elohim and the contention of this particular group with humanity. And we had, again, a whole year's worth of backlash, people being angry at us. I'm going to delete your show, your podcast. It was horrible. And so I want to talk to you because you guys were reading those comments, and some people who are new now dropping away from the matrix of control into this woo timeline and woo community trying to decipher reality. Some people might not have the reflexes to read those comments and realize that, hey, those are bots. They're engineered. There's a plan at play here so that you cannot get to this information. That's the whole point. That's why we're being attacked here at that level. Speak to that. Bring that into the fold here. Why this Elohim worship cult, the Naked Bible, the space aliens here who are involved that we're decoding now have invested interest right now in this narrative of disclosure that we're seeing unfold right now, Cliff? Bring that together for the audience.
This is very difficult, especially if you're new to this line of thinking. And we needn't get into either personalities other than the personalities of the space aliens or into characteristics of humans, right? We can just keep this at a very comfortable level and say that there is evidence that the existing power structure on Earth, as it is constituted through humanity, was put in place some thousands of years back. And that those same entities that put this power structure in place, that designed it, that crafted it, that structured it, and I'll get into why it's atypical to humans, but that they still have a vested interest in that power structure remaining intact. Okay, so if we can make all kinds of speculations about who these individuals are, space aliens, people on Earth, et cetera, but we, at a high enough level, you can see that, well, humans don't naturally organize themselves in a hierarchy. Okay, we don't naturally form armies. All of this is imposed on us. Now, we have Mauro Biglino translating the Bible, and we have all these other people that have accurately translated religious text to show us that it was these space aliens calling themselves the El. The Jewish word for many of these guys is Elohim, and they put in place the idea of a structured hierarchy that we now live in. And so there's also, and we should acknowledge that all of our historical literature about these space aliens, the Elohim, say that they are extremely long-lived individuals, that perhaps naturally they might live 2,000 years, but that they had artificial enhancements, they had technology that may allow them to extend that lifespan another tenfold. Okay, so they might live 20,000 years. So it is not beyond the realm of possibility that there are a few of these guys stashed around the planet still exerting their influences here on Earth. And as we've seen from the recent videos of the giant spaceships leaving the moon, it is reasonable to suppose that the Selenites, whatever they are constituted as, have some aspects of wanting this control system within Earth to still keep existing. And so this is what we're running up to, right? If you question the control system, you are the enemy of whoever owns that system. And however far back up you go in the chain of ownership on our control system, so if you start with $1 and you go back to the Federal Reserve and you go back to the owners of the Federal Reserve or wherever you start going out, science, right? You start in and seeing who's getting Nobel Prizes and who's getting awarded and all of this kind of stuff. It is an organized, controlled social order in which we live that is manipulated, okay? It is managed. And so I think of ourselves, according to the Bible, we are the goy, okay? We are the herd. Goy is a word that means meat animal. It does not mean nations. It does not mean people. This is a sop that the Hebrew speakers have put out now so that you won't recognize that they are your enemy. But goy means herd. And we are being managed as though we are a herd. And we now have all of those people that are coming on out with the horror of how the herd is being harvested. So this is basically where we find ourselves. And then you have to decide where you're going to slot yourself in this level of awareness. Okay. And so in my view, I have trained myself all of my life in a whole series of martial arts and mental disciplines. It would seem fitting that my idea that universe put me here in, because I believe in an ontology, I don't believe in grit world, but universe put me here to fulfill certain tasks and do certain work. This is species versus species. So we have to figure out how to approach that. It's not like a war that one banker is going to say, okay, Joe, calling another banker, war is over today.
Right.
Question for you, Cliff.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Where on planet Earth would be the most likely location of these Elohim? Would it be Antarctica, Himalayas, in the Domes?
Antarctica. They're not underground. Okay, they have issues with energy, so they need a specific level of energy to come on in.
The Gons you're talking about?
The Gons can be thought of as a lens. Okay, and so it needs that source to come in. It can't be underground. unless they've got a generator for it in the sense that can put out the energy from galactic center.
Okay.
That's my thinking on it.
Okay, so you mentioned you're ready to fight the Elohim worship cult here, Cliff. You're doing well, and a lot of people in the chat are saying, "Oh my God, you look fabulous!" And every time we see you, you seem to be younger and younger. Let me play a quick clip here from purebulk.com.
I'm Dorothy Clay with purebulk.com. I'm watching Fighting the Blue Chickens with John Claude and Clif High. As a special thank you to our loyal Beyond Mystic viewers, I would like to offer you a 15% discount on Clif High's Pure Sleep. It promotes restorative sleep and helps rebuild and re-energize the body. And you just might need it for the alien invasion. So go to purebulk.com and use coupon code BLUECHICKENS to get your Pure Sleep today. Now, back to the show.
Thank you, Dorothy. She's such a great sport. I asked her to prepare this promo for us. Cliff, good to see you laughing there. But speak quickly about why Pure Sleep was so important to you.
And so the one thing I knew going into it was that I needed to be able to sleep and I needed to be able to get my mind right in order to recover. That if I didn't first fix my mind, the body was not going to follow. And so I started researching. I want to say in September, so that would have been a couple of months after the surgery because it was just brutal. But I started researching and eventually came up with the formula for the Pure Sleep product here. And I found some elements in there that are vital, in my opinion, to getting you the mood in the morning to overcome the debilitation of that kind of an injury. Okay. And so that was, as soon as I had found this particular combination involving nutmeg and a few other elements, it was like, oh, I'm good. I know that this will work. And then I later on added GABA, which is a precursor to human growth hormone, so that my body would have the tools to be able to actually follow through on the feeling of, okay, I can get out there and do this, right? Mm-hmm. That in my opinion, you fix the mind or you're never going to get the body fixed.
Right. I know also, Jordan, you're a big fan of health, wellness. You've researched a lot of these products and supplements over the last number of years. I want you to have your take on this next ad I'm going to play for you guys here.
Folks, this is Ken Swartz, and I'm watching Fighting the Blue Chickens with Jean-Claude and Clif High. Hope you guys are enjoying the show. As a special thank you to the loyal Beyond Mystic audience, I would like to offer you a 15% discount on our C60 gummies. Neutralize those oxidative radicals, boost your energy, and rebuild your body into fighting shape. You might just need it for the alien invasion. Just go to shopc60.com and type in the coupon code BLUECHICKENS to get 15% off your C60 gummies. Now, back to the show.
We're having too much fun. Thank you, Ken Schwartz, Pure Bulk. C60 Purple Power there. Jordan, talk about that too, just very briefly here too. Your interest in being healthy, looking at all of these supplements, understanding that our world right now is not promoting nutrition anymore, and it's up to each and every one of us to make this research and to be into fighting shape. What do you say to the audience there?
Yeah, I mean, your body and mind are I can't say that word. Your body and mind are linked. So if you want your mind to get right, be able to see through the propaganda, be able to function properly, you have to get your body working properly. And not only within the greater pharmaceutical industry, but the supplement industry as well. There's so much conflicting information, so many clickbait marketing tactics, all sorts of crap. So we basically have to become our own doctors and research for ourselves, become self-aware of our own unique situations. I find that there's often a one-size-fits-all approach that's pushed by influencers online, whether everybody needs to go vegan to be healthy, everybody needs to go carnivore to be healthy, everybody needs to do this workout program to be healthy. But the thing is, we're all in different situations. We're all in different environments. So the self-awareness is key, being able to identify your own muscular imbalances, your own dietary issues, and then be able to know what to do to be able to rebalance yourself. So I've been working in the supplement industry for about 15 years now. I have my own supplement brand. I work with another one, and there's a lot of crap, not just from pharmaceutical world, but in supplement industry too. There's a lot of crap. I was actually checking out Pure Sleep a few weeks ago, and good product, man. Really good product. I like what you got in Pure Sleep.
Lots of great support in the chat. People have been using it for years here, and we keep getting all of these amazing testimonials moving forward. Guys, we are halfway through the show here, and we're leading into. We went into past to look at all of these tactics being used against us. It's trying to give and the scenarios we've been seeing play out here in the last 4 years. But just recently now, Dr. Stephen Greer has put out this brand new project initiative here of disclosure on his website, and that it appears to, at least in partially, have manifested some of the language in your old data sets. Tie that into the audience members here, how that is a contrast to what we're seeing in these controlled limited hangouts that we're going to get into now with these UAP conference holdings here at the Senate and Congress in the last year or two. Cliff.
So this is complex, all right, and there's many moving parts. The language that we see, or the release of the disclosure project by Stephen Greer is indeed only partially fulfilling it, right? But recently he has said that he has reason to believe that there are going to be direct data dumps to journalists by whistleblowers, right? And that will kick up the other aspects of the language that had been forecast here. And all of this is leading us into, and is at the beginning, the frothy part of the sci-fi world emerging. We have a very serious problem on this planet. Greer has to be given huge props for sticking to his guns and maintaining the language about that. And that is that basically 2/3 of humanity suffers because of our energy situation, and it need not, because we know how to produce free energy. And we can liberate humanity with that free energy. The only thing lacking is the political will knowledge on the part of the populace to overthrow the existing power structure, and it will be done. Okay, so if all of the populace decided today that I'm going to walk up to my nearest military base and with 500,000 other local residents, and we're just going to keep crowding in there until we occupy every square foot of it and shut the whole thing down, and then we do the same thing to Area 51 and all of the other federal installations that are housing this stuff, we will find the records and the products, right? There may be some confrontation with some of these people that think that they need to keep the public from what we've paid for, but that would happen. We are in the process of that occurring, no matter how much Trump and his people are going to fight it, okay? And how much the existing deep state is going to fight it. I am actually of the opinion that as we get closer to the denouement, the climax of our particular little movie here, the near-term climax of this, right? The near-term closing scene kind of thing for the deep state, they may very well pull the plug and flood us with all this information as a distraction while they try and hide, while they try and disappear, right? As a last-ditch effort, not to maintain control, but as a tactic in their retreat. We'll see if that actually manifests. But we are coming to that point in time. Okay, there's too many humans. The situation is factual that we know how to resolve this, and universe, the ontology, is basically providing all of the prompts, the positions, the oil under that guy's foot, whatever it takes to get us to these particular points, including the ontology using me with the forecast with Trump and the 39 days to melee, right? Mm-hmm. I am just a tool for universe, right? So I'm not, I don't direct anything. The only saving grace I have is that I live my understanding and I do my actions without any thought of ownership of the results. So I act without attachment to the end, and I act, therefore, I can act very, very, very cleanly and very purely in just doing what needs to be done, regardless of what happens to me as a result of that. The fourth one's not going to be a big shock. so along those lines, I'm quite free in doing these things. Right. But universe uses all of us. And we're at a very interesting time now because I think all of that's going to be coming out.
Right. Laura says Stephen Greer was calling. Sure. I did send him an invitation twice already. I don't know if it went to his spam folder, but Dr. Greer, if you're, of course, interested in coming on the show, I'd love to have you on. And this particular poster for the War Correspondence series, I wanted to discuss with you the battlefield of disclosure. So anytime you want to share your information and to the Beyond Mystic audience, please do contact me and we'll set that interview up. Now, this leads us into, Jordan, some of these latest UFO, UAP hearings, both last year with David Grush coming onto the scene, and this year also headlining here Luis Elizondo. Now, your first reactions to seeing all of this, to some extent, the population seems to be excited. Oh, yeah. The Pentagon is giving us these TikTok videos, and they're finally giving us some official news about ET. But it very much seems, for the people who have been at this for some time and asking serious questions, that this again is another limited hangout. What are your first impressions on those two last UAP conferences, Jordan?
Yeah, you said the magic words right there. In fact, I would like Cliff to chime in maybe later after I go on my rant here. But the way I'm seeing the whole sort of UFO arc play out is that you've got these two ends of these two polarities. On one polarity that we've been talking about for an hour here, you've got the conspiracy clickbaiters, much of which may be propped up by the CIA. And at the mainstream level, ever since the New York Times put out their UFO articles in December 2017, what I get the feeling that is a limited hangout. Limited hangout meaning that because so many people are digging into and questioning the UFO issue, the powers that be are offering up a tiny little sliver of truth to get people placated and distracted in order for them to cover up and keep the more sensitive information secret. And I think the powers that be don't care which side people get sucked into, crazy conspiracy UFO clickbait or mainstream limited hangout psyop, as long as they're not in the middle questioning both sides. Cliff, maybe you got some thoughts on this, but I don't, when I see personally Greer out there, I don't know how much Greer might be tying into that limited hangout psyop narrative. Maybe you've got some thoughts on this. And also when I'm seeing Lou Elizondo, David Grush in them, one of those narratives that the New York Times, Lou Elizondo, Jeremy Corbell have been promoting for years that make me think that they're part of a limited hangout op is that narrative is these UAP we're seeing in our sky could be Russia, could be China, could be aliens, but we know for a fact it's not US-made technology. Yeah.
There's a big certainty, yet they're uncertain. Yeah.
We know for a fact it's not US-made. It could be Russia, China, aliens, but not us.
Yeah, ignore the Raytheon logo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Lockheed, skunk works skunk slapped on the slide of one of these discs or black triangles. So
let me have you chime in on this clip. I want to play this quick clip. Also, this is from the one that we just had last month. This particular exchange is interesting because it goes to the core of not just the technology, but perhaps who's behind it. And let's see what they're answering us here.
For all four of you, yes or no, please. I have many questions I want to get to. Are there any known instances of recovered materials or technologies that are not of human origin and maybe connected to any advanced bioscience defense programs within the USG?
I don't know.
I wouldn't be able to answer that, ma'am.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
But yet it's at the core of all this. Guys, we're going to wait for Cliff to come back here. He had to pick up the phone call here. So you mentioned something. I saw a video of yours maybe a couple of weeks ago, or I think it was on Good Morning Jordan Sader Behind the Cosmic Curtain on YouTube. And you were discussing some of your thoughts with Luis Elizondo and his current narrative. Explain to the audience where you're a little bit dubious here about his representations and perhaps his background in all of this.
Yeah, well, from what I understand, Lou Elizondo was brought into the Pentagon in 2008 to work on that ATIP project by James Clapper. James Clapper, from my understanding, was the one that brought Lou Elizondo in to work on that UFO project. And if we're going to, James Clapper, incredibly suspect right there. And then now we've got Lou Elizondo coming out with Chris Mellon and others since 2017 with their very specific narratives that, you know, this tech could be China or aliens, most definitely not us. And now, more recently, over the past couple of months, there's been a couple of private gatherings that Lou Elizondo held that were paid. You had to pay to attend them. And Lou Elizondo was caught promoting 2 fake UFO images as if they were real. One of the UFO images was clearly a reflection of a light, of a light in his kitchen. You could even see the top of his hair in the reflection, but he's promoting it as a real UFO to this paid event that he's hosting. So I don't know what Elizondo's deal is when you've got a lifelong counterintelligence agent coming out claiming to be for disclosure. To me, that warrants a lot of questions.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Clif, your mic. Hold on. Let me unmute you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Was that Stephen Greer calling you for an interview?
No. Yeah, Jordan's correct. And so they all have a particular bent and a particular viewpoint. They are there to protect the oil industry's assets by trying to get us to think about, in my opinion, what they would like to do would be to dangle little tiny bits of space alien flashy bits in front of the populace for another 100 years. Right? They don't want to get to a resolution. They just don't want us to get to the resolution that fixes everything. They don't want us to get to the secrets that they're holding, not because they're classified, not because they're sensitive, not because they can be weaponized, but because it destroys their asset base and therefore their control over all humans. Imagine that this, all of Earth is owned in some fashion by a corporation claiming to own stuff under it, on it, or above it. Okay, all of those ownership claims exist because of the energy that powers the financial structure and the legal structure. If the energy that powers the financial structure and the legal structure, therefore the government, goes away, that government collapses, that power structure collapses. All of that just simply ceases to exist, including the claims to ownership. So because look at it this way, if we have 0 point energy, who cares if Standard Oil says they've got a bazillion barrels of oil under Alaska? We don't care. We're only going to use maybe a few thousands of barrels or tens of thousands of barrels a year in oil for fuel, and maybe a few hundreds of thousands for plastics. So it's not going to be a big deal, right? But that will also apply to everything. All debt will go away, all claims of ownership based on debt. So Trump's buildings are all mortgaged. So as soon as this happens, he doesn't own buildings anymore. He doesn't own hotels and shit. None of the stuff in any of the financial world is in any way paid for. Okay, it's all based on debt, on debt, on debt, on debt, all of which is residing on these pools on claims of ownership to future sources of energy, i.e. oil.
Is that why you were busting 107's balls over the last couple of years, talking about this election process and how you felt that they just wanted to put their guy, but to keep the whole system in place the same and not to change anything? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. I like Juan. He's a very good thinker. He's decent. He's blinded by religion, in my viewpoint. I think he believes it. But he's a decent thinker. But he's a tool of the deep state. Even though he thinks he's fighting the deep state, he's like Lenin says, or whoever it was, the best way to do this is to own the opposition, right? So they own Trump and all of these people. It's shocking how many Zionists Trump is appointing in your face. Zionists, okay, so Zionists are a subset of the Jewish population, all right? So the Jewish population globally is less than 0.4%. In the widest margin you can come up with, less than 0.4% of the global population. So not even 1% of the entire population are Jewish. And of that, Zionists are a very small part. Yet Trump's administration is jam-packed with Zionists, just jam-packed. So under the circumstances, he's as controlled as anyone else. I'm not expecting anything from him except that it won't be as bad as so that then they can give us Trump and they can make him into a savior, and we'll be happy for a while, and we won't cause them problems, is their thinking. This time they've, in my opinion, they very egregiously erred, okay, because they are not reading what has happened. The reason that they're not reading what has happened is because they're Elohim worship cultists at their core, which means that they are ritual bound. Ritual is deaf to the reality changing around it. Ritual is an attempt to manipulate matter in order to change the energies of the future or whatever in your environment. It never works. It is a sop to a particular kind of a mental processes. They are bound up in it. They're doing it now. They're doing all of their rituals. Look how hard they tried to get their, that sort of thing, right? Now their problem is that we're out of the Kali Yuga, and we're out of the transition period of the Kali Yuga. In that 325 years, we're in the 326th year, which is the opening. And so we're opening into all these new energies, and they are not prepared to cope with it. They're trying to keep us controlled the way they had these last few hundred years.
The rules of engagement have changed by the fact that the nature of the energy has changed. Exactly. So they're not reading the room here with all those rituals. And you have to see, guys, we had so much shit on Sunday night, Janine and I, for even attempting to get through and broach that subject about these nominations and perhaps the scenarios that are at play now, and why we need to keep these guys' feet to the fire here with respect to those promises. And, if you listen to Trump on the election night, he said that his administration would be basically described into one theme: promise made, promise kept. So we're waiting for that. And even asking the questions about what's not being done right now is putting us in a lot of heat. So again, we're seeing some of the same tactics being used against us here, having these very deep questions. Now, Cliff, this moves us into now this 39 days to melee. Let me see if I can bring this up on the screen for you guys. This was one of the Substack that you put out here a month or two ago. It led to this very famous episode, the Wacky Woo here special edition with you, 500,000 views here on Rumble plus the other platform. And there we were decoding your initial Webbot data report from 2019 that talked about this Joe Rogan interview, to where it was going to bring this temporal marker here, him interviewing the president, President Trump, and that from then on we had this 39 days to melee. Now, this is part of what is being used right now, propelled inorganically in the background, to bring the attention to this alien invasion. They're quoting you, and in my opinion, misquoting you here, saying that this alien invasion would begin on December 3rd. Can I play just this 4-minute clip of you? And that's just to put it on the record for the audience members here, so they hear it for the horse's mouth if they haven't heard this clip. And then we'll come back to the conversation. We'll see the orchestration of all of the media that's been hyped here in the last couple of days, pursuant to this particular piece. Let's play this clip.
We had this situation within the data in 2009 that had been reinforced over the years from 2009 through to 2015, that said that 39 days after this TM took place, we would have and this is where Igor and I did our fighting, we would have this visible contention that would dissolve into a melee. And at the time, and even in our even in our conversations here recently, he wanted to say, and I'll title this way in honor of Igor here, but he wanted to say that it was 39 days to melee, which is a catchy phrase. Okay, it'd be a nice title for a book or something. But in my opinion, it's not quite accurate, right? Because we don't know what the distance is between the organized visible contention that then degrades into the melee. That might be months for all we know. But what we do have some justification for suggesting is that there will be 39 days between the temporal marker of the Trump interview and the appearance of this visible contention. And we're not talking, people taking on migrant gangs that are taking over apartment buildings. That kind of visible contention may well be in there, but the stuff that had been motivating me to get hold of Dick Allgaier was the visible contention between space aliens. Okay, so, or whatever, right? Alien reproduction vehicles or whatever the hell. Who knows what's going on? Because we can't validate any of it at this point, right? Now we've got that same set of linguistics again, and apparently we have confirmation that the interview will take place, and therefore we'll have it as a temporal marker itself. And so that sets going a sort of a timer. Bear in mind what I was telling you about how we get these times, right? It's software adding up all of this shit based on all these words, and we're constantly wrong to some great degree. And it varies based on the size of the set, the amount of processing it takes, and yada, yada, yada. So it's not like any kind of guaranteed date or anything, right? It is just
Okay, that's very interesting, because now if you look at what's happening in the news, it's like Clif High is predicting an alien invasion on December 3rd. And so we're seeing this promulgated here bigger and bigger across the news feeds in the last couple of days. Again, in this attempt to orchestrate or drum up, even Shadow of Ezra was posting this just the other day. And finally, let me see if I can bring that for you guys here. This was the post here. And also just now, recently on Newsweek, picking up this futurist alien prediction for December 3rd, taking off online. And of course, they're talking about Clif High's WebBot data. So it appears that what's happening here behind the scenes is they took this video, selectively took a narrative from it, and are now putting it forward to hype up something for one specific reason. What do you think is happening? Let me ask you first, Clif. What are we seeing here?
If you look at the set aside their actions for a moment, just look at all of the UFO stuff that's come out over the past few days. Okay, say the last week. We've got, I think, 9 separate instances in Portugal now, multiple sightings, multiple UFOs doing stuff. We've got UFOs over Texas being reported by airlines. We've got all different kinds of stuff. We've got drones over England. These drones are quite odd because they come in a number of shapes. Okay, so that's odd. There's 5 different sizes of them. And the smaller one, or one of the smaller ones, is the size of an SUV. And these things have been hanging up in the air for 5 days, trucking around. So it is my supposition. And now there's 2 other things there. There's a giant UFO that is seen coming out of the Crisis C on the moon. Okay, massive UFO. If you look at the size of the Crisis C and just use the optics, this thing's got to be 40 or 50 miles long and maybe 2 miles wide. It's cigar shaped, and it comes up out of the crater, and then it moves off on its side and heads off the moon, and then it goes zipping off. Right? There are a number of these. There's also a bunch of UFOs or drones or orbs or whatever you want to call them that are splitting in half. They're long and cylindrical. They split in half and go off in different ways. So there's all this stuff going on. And then we have the FBI hunting for drones in New Jersey and New York and a few of the other places on the East Coast where they're also swarming our military bases. And bear in mind, in Europe, anyway, because their excuse was, we don't want these SUV-sized things falling on civilian houses. But they never address where they're from, who owns them, and why they are not taking action over places like Langley and some of these Air Force bases here in the United States. And so it is my supposition that what the social engineers are trying to do with pumping up my stuff is to create the idea that it actually is an invasion, and pretty soon the aliens will be raining out of the sky to take over the earth, right? I think they want to try and get that all ginned up, when in fact I've been trying to take care to say the mainstream media is going to use the invasion word, but the aliens are just going to be sitting there so that you can see them, as we discussed the other day, right? They want you to see them. They're here to announce themselves, to show themselves, such that we can begin dialogue. And I don't think that the powers that be want us to have dialogue at all with these guys. I don't think they can prevent it. I think, in my opinion, that there is an element of Stephen Greer's statement that is correct, that we are at risk of to some degree, of risk of extreme unction. Okay, for their own purposes, for their own survival, for their own safety. And we can get into that if you want. But anyway, so I think that there is that there is some level of risk at that. I'm of the opinion that the space aliens are far more intelligent than to come and just wipe out the cockroaches, us, and that rather they're going to try and educate the cockroaches so that we're not behaving badly. Okay. And really, it's the primates, we're interesting, we're cool, they like us. So they have to deal with the problems we are causing. That appears in our data that we're at that point now, that they will do so, that they will deal with the primates causing issues. And I think that they will be doing it in an extra governmental, extra officialdom fashion. And I can think of dozens of different ways that would be very entertaining to see them proceed. This is going to be coincident with the emergence of the 0-point technology because of a number of factors, okay? And they are inextricably linked all the way through in this whole process.
I'll get into the Trump fucks up video here and how you get into this report in a second. Let me have Jordan chime in also here. Jordan, when you're seeing here what seems to be orchestrated falsely drumming up some of his predictions into what we're seeing now, but in tangent also seeing all of these new sightings appear almost on cue. It appears like, just like it was perhaps for you 10 years ago, there's a bigger hand at play here in the background. Are you seeing that with the scenario now? What do you want to add to the context, Jordan?
Some of these recent UFO sightings I'm unfamiliar with. So listening to Clif there, a lot of hypotheses come into my mind. It seems to me that the fake alien invasion is fake. And it's not that the deep state actually wants to invade or use holographic technology or whatever the case, but it's more of a propaganda tool that they're using, similar to what Cliff said, right? And many of these UFO sightings look real. I haven't seen that one on the moon that you were playing there, but in watching that, I've seen a lot of fake CGI AI UFO videos on social media. That one was interesting. That one looks a heck of a lot different with the actual shadow on the moon. And you can see the atmospheric interference even affect the craft. So that's a curious video. I'm going to check that out after this show and do a little more digging into that.
I miss my friend Bruce Cesal. We used to have a series here on YouTube and on Rumble where we would look at some of his video captures and still photography of the moon. And he'd just been documenting for the last number of years all of this activity, not just of craft fighting each other, explosions, lightings, but also a build out in space. Like he went far enough as to see that there seems to be structures now, and those structures were bigger than they were when he previously looked at them. So I miss Bruce Cesal. I wish him best. And
I mean, in this video,
yeah, go ahead.
You can even see the atmospheric interference messing with the footage. You see the shadow there too, and the fact that this is happening on the daytime side of the moon. These things want us to see them. You know, they want us to see these craft. But I also think with some of these sightings, because there's so many space alien sightings happening recently, that would make good cover for the deep state to bring in some of their own craft or their own drones to fly them over maybe Bedminster, New Jersey. And people are going to think they're alien UFOs when it's really some sort of deep state craft.
I think they'll go further here. Okay, so we're not as easily frightened now, right? And so they have to gin up every single time you go to one of these things. They have to raise the ante because that's the only thing that gets your attention and gets that emotional response that they want. Now, so let me divert for something really odd. Okay, the guy who worked with Ingo Swann and helped him was this guy, Michael Persinger, who was a scientist. Persinger discovered that he discovered lots of fantastic stuff. One of the things he discovered was that there are these micro instabilities that can occur on the membrane of cells within your neurons, within your brain, and that those, when these instabilities occur, a particular kind of a psychiatric condition that's labeled as a parasitic consciousness can arise. Okay, and then they class a bunch of stuff into parasitic consciousness. But basically, it's sort of like a disease that you don't want to get. Now, Persinger also discovered that all of humanity is linked by the Schumann resonance, 7.83 hertz, okay? The Schumann resonance exists because of the depth of the atmosphere between the Earth and the upper boundary of the ionosphere. If you change the depth of the atmosphere, such as moving the moon in place, you change the Schumann resonance, okay? What I think of as the Earth resonant field. When you change, because I don't like labeling stuff with a person's name. I'd rather say cycles than hertz, you know?
Yeah.
But any event though, so when you change this resonance, you change the mental state of humans. That we are as we are now because that resonance is at 7.83. and that is below 8 and above 4. And in that bound is the area where we find mystic experience, religious experience, hypnosis, meditation, sleep, dreaming, and fantasy. Above 8, it's all hippocampus, hard, declarative, rational thinking, blah, 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 blah. So maybe in the far distant past, we had a different Hertz level, and all of our great thinkers did not delve into fantasy. Maybe the only reason Corey Goode exists as a fantasyist, along with, Linda Moulton Howell and all these other people, Kerry Cassidy and these kind of people, maybe the only reason that they exist is because we have this resonance level at 7.83. And then
we've been fucked with. You and I got into that in this episode here, Sci-Fi World Lunacy. We put that out.
Yeah, and of course, maybe the last conclusion to make is that there's a possibility that it's deliberate that we are as we are. Now, if you were a space alien species and you know these kind of things because you're coming from an ontological viewpoint and you're going to just scope everything out from an ontological viewpoint, look from large down to small rather than start at small trying to see large, which is the grit version, the Einstein version. But if you were a space alien and you knew this kind of thing, and you had problems with that pesky primate humanity down there, what might you do to alleviate your problems? I don't think Stephen Greer's correct that extreme unction is in our near future. I think the threat of it is certainly out there. How long it is between now and any kind of activation of that extreme unction is very indeterminate, but I think the space aliens will try a number of things. And I can think of at least 20 that have a real good possibility of working. And you would use some of these in combination. One of the things you might do would be to alter the Schumann resonance, kick us up over 8, or as many of us as possible up towards 8, so that we're thinking in a more rational mind. Also, as an aside,
or attack your vagus nerve system so that you don't connect to space energies the way that you did before, and your antenna is diminished by it.
See, that's what the bad guys want to do. That's what they want to do, is keep us. That's why the chemtrails. That's why all the attacks on the vagus nerves. I'm saying the space aliens are not our enemies. They've just got a problem, which is the humanity. Okay, they don't want us to be buttheads anymore, right? So.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
Okay, so they want to fix the situation with as little damage to everybody as possible, because if you come from an ontological viewpoint, you know deep in your core the effects of the yoga or of the yoga, the binding. Okay, so there's 4 kinds of yogas that humans have identified. Yoga, the word everybody says means union. It does not. In Avestan, it meant binding. So karma is bound to you. You don't seek union with karma, right? And so the space aliens know the binding. They're not going to bind their karma to ours. It would be the last thing they would want to do, and a step that they would take, because the alternatives would be just too, because they would bind their karma to ours at that point forever and ever. And it may be that they're willing to accept that because we are such problems, and that they need to address this. But I think that they'll do all of these other little steps along the way to see if they can make any of those successful. And a bunch of those really are very promising. One of which is to change the very nature of humanity in a subtle way that we would not necessarily be aware of, which would be to bring in these other objects that would alter the ionosphere such that we have a different cycle level within the Schumann resonance.
That's
Make
fascinating.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely fascinating. Thank you. And I'm going to concentrate on that a little bit more, and perhaps we'll have you on again, and we'll look at these options a little bit more further on. For the sake of this show here too, based on that 39 days to melee, you also produced this Trump fucks up video. Here you're talking about the news that he's wanting to take the BRICS nations who are trying to move away from the petrodollar. Again, suggesting that you might have been correct on the track this last year, bitching at 107, that these guys wanted to come back into power, but leave the control system exactly in place the way it was. Now, in your old Web Data reports, I believe, my God, probably 2012 or 13, you already had this idea that there would be 3 financial resets. Jim Sinclair also had been on the show with Andy Scheckman and Bill Holter, also suggesting that we would see humanity here 3 huge resets moving forward. In this video, you're talking about the fix, the rebirth, the new system, and then the last one here, 0-point technology. Can you run us through that here very quickly? Here's what you expect here that just seems to be kicked off here by Donald Trump this last weekend, Cliff.
I suspect they're doing number 3 now. The one that'll be thrown away the easiest and the quickest which is a claim to be able to fix the dollar by imposing tariffs. That's not going to work because it doesn't address any of the ills of the dollar and the fact that it has no spending power, it has no purchasing power left in it, and it can't compete with anything that does have purchasing power. And so, Bitcoin is an example of that, right? So, so I suspect that that's what they're doing now. I think it'll fail sometime around the 15th to the 18th of this month. They will wise up, and then we'll start seeing the language change, and they won't be saying about the tariffs so much. They'll be dealing with other systemic issues with the dollar. Okay, and that's the rebirth phase, where they're going to try and figure out some way to come up with a structure that preserves the Federal Reserve note with some other form of support underneath it, as though it were backed. Okay, they can't back the Federal Reserve note, and they would never ever have enough backing for all the quadrillions of derivatives that already exist, right? And so you can't fix the dollar, nor, in my opinion, can you rebirth it with any of its existing structure, like the Federal Reserve, et cetera. I do believe we will go to a constitutional dollar, and the Federal Reserve will just be left over there.
And did you see also Texas last week? We're proposing a gold-backed and silver-backed currency for the state. So this is way more than just announcing gold and silver as legal tender. We appear to be moving into this very multipolar world here, and I think that's what they're trying to keep into control here. But it feels like it's going to break out. You had in maybe last month in one of your emails that you had sent me the fact that it appeared you had language that you would see tanks, armored vehicles surrounding the Federal Reserve. How does that transpire here, and how close are we to those data sets, Cliff?
That's in the melee period. That's part of the scenery for the melee period, is the military being out there doing stuff, right? No one's really sure about who's doing what, because they can't really tell you why the military is out there without revealing why the military is out there, that the dollar is failing, and they can't have the dollar fail. So in my opinion, the Trumpsters are in for a big kick in the gut, and they're just going to have all of the wind knocked out of them, because they're planning on a system. They're planning on a structure for the next 4 years and they have no thoughts in that plan for what they're going to do if the dollar doesn't exist, whether they do anything about it or not. And they're grasping and grasping and grasping with tariffs and stuff is not going to aid the dollar. It is simply going to delay their complete loss of control to a certain extent, right? Because it doesn't fix the dollar. Tariffs in no way fix the dollar. They're attempting to fix the Federal Reserve by dealing with our trade issues. We should direct ourselves to the Federal Reserve because it is the source of the problem. So the Trumpsters are going to lose power in the only real sense that it exists, and that is emotional social credit. Okay, so they've already lost power with me.
So that's what Penny Kelly was alluding to on Sunday in one of her scenarios. She said that Trump basically loses the respect of the population, or that they move away from him as the God Almighty Savior of everything. And so you're saying that's already transpiring.
It's already happened for me. I know lots of people that I contact around here locally, and the guy was saying, "What? Trump's going to appoint that bastard?" And it's like, the minute you have that thought, because all of the population is all kicked loose from the. It's very easy for such things to occur en masse, and it just has to hit that particular note, so to speak. So what they're trying to do is to generate a new narrative that the dollar can be saved by tariffs, which is as false as chemtrails don't exist. Right. And so you're not going to achieve what their narrative is describing. So therefore, when they don't deliver on their promise, what are you going to do?
Yeah, people are in for a rude awakening. Jordan, just before we started the show, Cliff and I have been very vocal about our opposition to the narratives of QFS, Nicera, Jacera. You were mentioning also that you had been tackling this subject on your Rumble here for a number of years, and that just recently there was some of these people who were pushing out these narratives in fast order. What do you make of that, and where are we in the timeline as far as you're concerned here with this financial reset? What does it look like?
Well, I have no idea what the financial reset is going to look like could have to do with gold and silver, maybe crypto. Some element of crypto is going to be involved. But in terms of Nazara and the so-called quantum financial system, that those ideas have been promoted by clickbait blogs online for decades. I came across Nazara back in 2011, and I was bought and sold on it, thinking we're going to get a worldwide revaluation and a bunch of magic money dumped into our bank accounts. And then a couple of years went by, nothing happened. All the blogs I was reading on the internet said next week, next week, next week. Never happened. Finally woke up to the Nazara scam. Sometime around early 2018, 2017, early 2018, you saw this QFS quantum financial system narrative get ingrained in with the Nazara Jazara and promoted onto social media. Over the past 4, 5, 6 years on social media, the Nazara propaganda has gotten very prominent. A lot of influencers, some even claiming they are spokespeople for the quantum financial system, like Charlie Ward on screen here, many others. And a lot of these people network with each other, promote each other's propaganda, promote each other's Nazara disinformation. There's dozens and dozens of different podcasters and fairly prominent social media accounts.
What do you make of the recent reversals? Why now?
I don't know. It's funny, actually, because Charlie Ward claimed that, oh, the QFS is white hat disinformation. It's not my fault. I was just given disinformation by my white hat insiders about the QFS. And it's the same thing David Wilcock does. He claims, oh, the briefings I get, it could be disinformation. So if I fuck up, it's not my fault. I was just getting purposeful disinformation from my white hat insiders in my briefings. It's the same backpedaling CYA cover their ass excuse. I think the QFS stuff is just getting so overplayed, so played out online. People aren't buying it anymore. So Charlie's just trying to save his fat face and come out with an excuse for it to cover his ass.
Is he being told, Cliff, maybe that in your web data reports right now there's vigilantism maybe coming their way, just as you just mentioned here?
That sort of thing, right? And so we'll see this. This was just the beginning of it. I won't go into any of the details, but I suspect that because this occurred, that's why I got that call.
Fascinating. Okay, do you want to speak about that or no? No, we'll leave it at that maybe for another show. Let me play a quick clip here from Andy Scheckman, and then we'll go back into what Jordan was just talking about, gold, silver, and crypto, and perhaps some of the outlets that people can use here to navigate what's about to happen on their financial world. So let's play this clip.
Andy Scheckman here. I'm watching Fighting the Blue Chickens with Jean-Claude and Clif High. Hope you guys are enjoying the show. As a special thank you to the Beyond Mystic audience, I'm pleased to offer you junk silver to $1.89 over spot. It's going to be the lowest price you'll find anywhere, period. Check out beyondmystic.net/silver and fill out the form and get your silver before the alien invasion. Now back to the show.
Okay, we had to make fun of that. Okay, so let's talk about that first. Cliff, silver, you were famous a number of years ago for this web data report of the $600 silver. We wouldn't necessarily like the world we would live in when we saw that. We just saw the Russian counterparts came out after the BRICS meeting suggesting that they were going to take over control, basically, of the COMEX and the LME market rigging business, suggesting that they would be part of the pricing mechanisms moving forward. All of this in an attempt where here in the United States is trying to rehash or to repair the US dollar, perhaps with a gold backing. It seems that things are very much at odds for them, but we could be entering that time frame here of that $600 silver. Speak to that, speak to the strategic nature of it, and this whole idea that we're moving into sci-fi world 0-point technology and how silver has a big role to play in that. Cliff.
Okay, so first off, the Russians did not say that they were going to be part of the pricing mechanism. They said they were going to destroy the market riggers. Okay, so they're not going to join the LME or any of these guys. They're going to put them out of business. I think that's really imminent. I don't think that the LME and these guys will exist in February, sometime after February. Okay, so silver is going to go to $600 and more. That's just a brief point along on its stopping. Silver has strategic use. Okay, so I've got friends of mine that are in India, and India is suffering silver shrinkage now. Silver is so valuable, people are paying such premiums for it that there's an arbitrage, and people are smuggling silver out of India. into China to get the few little bits of arbitrage on top of it. I think China's buying it for its strategic use. And here's the thing. Ever since 1954, when we had when we conquered gravity, when we learned to control gravity, we've had an increasing need for silver, and we've exhausted a lot of the above ground stores that just happen to be sitting around. So, and now they were claiming that it was going into photovoltaics and other green energy. And I don't buy that. I think that that has been maybe a small fraction, maybe less than 10% of the actual use of this stuff over these last few years. I've done some analyses, and it looks as though there's a huge demand for silver and no other metal will work. And we're not yet producing silver. And your and my buddy Ken Schwartz, who's a real damn scientist and knows how to make metal and make gold and shit, is telling us that silver is difficult, much more difficult to produce than gold because of the two isotope issue. Gold has only got one, right?
You're talking about the Moxie fusion part?
Correct. Using Moxie fusion is very difficult, very expensive to make silver, unlike making gold. Okay, so anyway, I think one of the uses for the silver is that they are somehow atomizing it or putting it down one molecule thick on the inside of all of the guide tubes that are existent in these structures, okay, the UFOs. And the reason that they do that is to control the electrical eddy currents in these high voltage situations, all right? And no other metal except a lot of gold. A lot of gold would do what one small thin layer, one molecule deep of silver would do. And there's reasons to not use gold in this, but so all these guide tubes for the energy flows are going to have to be lined with silver everywhere to prevent this, to present a smooth surface to the electricals so that you don't get any cross currents, because basically your UFO would probably explode. So this is a much greater use than simply solder connections in photovoltaics, right?
Is that why, like, I've been having a lot of conversations with Andy Scheckman about all these countries saying that they're stockpiling silver for the upcoming solar wave initiative, and he says, no, that's bullshit. That's probably military use. You're talking about more their prepositioning here for zero-point technology coming out.
Right, and bear in mind, if you're going to use zero-point technology for military use, which it has those military uses, you still have to have the silver to line the guide tubes in order to produce the zero-point technology, or zero-point energy.
Right.
Okay, so and we know that they've weaponized it. At least Greer is very convinced that they've indeed weaponized all of this stuff. So there's an aspect of it there, right? So no one's going to go back to a gold-backed dollar. That's fantasy. No one is ever going to be able to back our dollars with gold. Bix is correct. The Federal Reserve may think about it that way in terms of road to Ruta and so on, but it physically will not happen at this point. We've gone too far. We may come out to a constitutional dollar that involves itself with gold and silver, and maybe we'll use gold and silver in a non-convertible fashion. That is, maybe we'll use real money, tender gold and silver to each other in some form, right? Maybe there'll be crypto linked or whatever, but it's not going to be a gold-backed dollar. I think all this, so it could be that the Trumpsters, the brand, are being strategic, that they know the dollar is dying, but they can't at this point say it. Maybe they've got plans for introducing a dollar replacement as early as, next summer or something. I don't suspect that we would, maybe we'll make it to summer with the dollar in its current situation. Maybe. The unrealized losses on the banks will take down all the banks. There won't be any standing. The credit unions may survive for some period of time, but without the banks, they go down as well. So it will be a calamity of a financial system, that kind of thing, but it'll be a huge, giant disruption to the social order. And that's what
into the supply chain,
everything. And so remember, okay, so now if you go back to like maybe it was 2010, 12, something in there in the data in the old WebBot reports where it talked about people sending countries sending America ships loads of aid, right? And this is after the collapse. They're going to send us food, all different kinds of stuff because we're going to be in such dire straits. In my opinion, I don't see any evidence that the Trumpsters are aware of the woo that they're getting into, of what is going to beset them. Now, if I were in their position, I would do everything I could to not show any of that kind of evidence, because you can't tip your hand too early that you're prepared to abandon the dollar, right?
Right,
So
right.
there's all kinds of complexities in this, and
some argue that that's what he's doing with this 100% tariff. He's pretending a fake over here while they're working on something else in the background. He has been on record in the last couple of weeks talking about this Bitcoin strategic reserve, and he's also talking about leaving the old world slow banks behind. So there's some hints.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's stop a few things there and let's look at practical reality. Okay. QFS doesn't exist because you can't network quantum computers. They're batch machines. All right. So that's
I was trying to have that conversation with Gary Cassidy, but it didn't really work out.
No, you can't get anything through Carrie, right? She's a fantasyist and she only believes in her fantasies. Charlie Ward promulgated, he was the first person I ever heard mention QFS. Later on, I heard him take ownership of it. Oh, I'm in charge of when the QFS rolls out and all this other blustery things. Now he's throwing it under the bus. So there are practical stoppage points to things, okay? So Bitcoin is slow. So Bitcoin can be a strategic reserve and you can settle cross-country or cross-nation debts with it, but it's never going to be the daily money of people, right? It just can't. The Lightning Network adding and dealing only in Satoshis, yeah, we could cover that. But then you're going to still have to engineer the binding to some form of a plastic so that you can use all the card structure that's there now. So we have some huge technical hurdles to go through in any form of a solution. All right. And so it's my opinion that we come to all of these crises basically about the same time, within the same year. We'll have the currency collapse, we'll have the debt collapse, we'll have the derivatives break down, we'll have government fall apart, we'll have government employees leave because they can't and are not getting paid, we'll have the breakdown of our ability to trade, buy stuff here in the US. All of these things will happen pretty much all at the same time as the space aliens are coming in, as the discontinuity erupts. Okay, so the discontinuity dilemma is this: 1/3 of humanity that does have that energy, and we're the ones in control. We're the petroleum countries that have the energy to cook my food and so on, right? And because of the financial system, the people in Africa, South America, all over the planet are deprived, not because I have energy, but because the financial system deprives them of that energy because the system is focused on enriching only a very few people. It is not designed to serve the masses, okay? And therefore, because of the ontology, because of where we're at now, and because of what universe is doing, we are going to reach this crisis where we must come and face our karma. We have to deal with this. I would like to be adult. I don't want to go on out and have raging gangs throwing up, and all of this kind of thing. I would like to have reasonable adult conversations about this ahead of time. Unfortunately, our political structure is not set up to accommodate such reasonable, considered thinking about collective problems. Now, in my opinion, I see things happening that seem to indicate to me, that definitely indicate to me, that the aliens are going to bypass officialdom and that they're going to choose another method for what they have to do. And so I think they are doing that now. And that this was the organized contention, because we've already had that. Last night before, they had the FBI going on out, dealing with this stuff. We got military in England dealing with the 5 different kinds of drones over the bases. So we're in organized contention now. Maybe the melee comes in January because we get into the point where the lack of appropriate thinking shows itself in the action of the Trumpsters, and we start seeing what Penny Kelly was talking about, where people disaffect. They turn their emotions away from, the red wave, because the red wave ain't going anywhere.
We have the contention, and we also have the beginnings, at least, of the language of the melee. If you look at what's happening in South Korea, let's see if I can bring this up in the news here, and of course, so it feels like all of this fighting is happening at the same time. We seem to be in the inklings of it. Let me ask you, Jordan, you mentioned gold, silver, and crypto. On your Rumble channel, let me see if I can bring this back up for the audience members. What do you think, or what do you suggest is the best way to navigate all of these crazy changes, but what Clif High was alluding to here, the disruption into the power structure and also into the supply chain, and how you think using maybe gold, silver, and some crypto might help people traverse this period of time? What do you say?
I mean, at the current moment, each of these financial instruments are just tools. They're value exchange mechanisms. So I still have some dollars on hand. When it comes to gold and silver, there's only so much you can do with each one of these tools, right? If I'm trying to send some kind of value to someone internationally, the easiest way to do that is going to be through cryptocurrency because you don't have to go through any middleman. Gold and silver have their place, but granted, they're heavy, so there's only so much you can carry around with you. Dollars, granted, the idea of a fiat Federal Reserve note is they print a shitload of it and it loses value, but it's a heck of a lot easier to give to somebody in person than crypto or a gold and silver coin. So each one of these mechanisms are simply tools. When it comes to cryptocurrency, I'm not really a fan of XRP. I see XRP connected to the World Economic Forum, and there's some former Obama administration officials on the board of XRP. So I know XRP has been going up in value the last month, and there's a lot of people on the internet that are big fans of it and shill it all the time. But I have some questions about XRP. Bitcoin. The thing about cryptocurrency is you need internet, you need electricity for it, which what if you don't have those? Which is why I think it's important to have some sort of on-hand tool that you can use for value exchange. At the end of the day, I think we're going to get back to a lot more barter and trade for our common goods, for our value exchange, trading things like food or ammo or coffee or cigarettes or something like that. So,
and perhaps ultimately to no money when we have free energy. This changes the game completely for humanity moving forward. Cliff, adding to that here, we just mentioned Bitcoin. We're inches away right now from what you predicted long time ago. People thought you were crazy, and I kept saying he might be crazy, but doesn't mean he's wrong. And so anyways, we're there now. We're sitting at $98,000 in Bitcoin. Part of that data set was the panic to own. And it appears now that with this currency war that Trump has just started, we might be inching closer to that. And I think the last time you were on your show, you think that panic to own could be here as close as December. Are you still on track with that? Did you see any more cross links in your data? Go ahead.
When I was looking through the last of it there were a number of sets for December 15th that are showing up. So I've got these sort of hiccup dates, December 15th, January 15th, February 15th, and March 15th. March 15th, I think, is nobody files taxes. Okay, so I think that's the big hiccup, that everybody just says, fuck the IRS, I'm not filing. And it's a giant social hiccup. Okay, the other three are economic or financial. And so I think we're going to get into it. And December 15th through the end of the month is going to bring us one level of crises that will then grow into January 15th and do another level of crises here. And we're going to go through this period of time where there are going to be three bits of thinking about what do we do with our dollar situation, right? How do we get ourselves out of this mess? Because the platitudes, the shit that's worked in the past won't work now because the dollar is a corpse, right? In the past, you could give the patient lying on the drunk patient lying on the floor of the bar, totally exhausted from years of alcoholism, totally dissipated. You could give him another shot of alcohol and get him moving again, right? And so they're going to keep trying to pour alcohol down the dollar's throat to get him to stand up and do what they want, but it won't happen. And as I say, I don't see any thinking on their part that's coming out that suggests that they are indeed pondering these issues. So, Kash Patel heading the FBI is going to be great, but what happens when 90% of the employees of the FBI just simply fail to show up because they haven't been paid in a meaningful fashion for 2 months, right? That may happen as early as the end of February. And so we're into that part of this experiment, of this thing that we're going to be going through. Now, I have a tendency to live further in the future, projecting out, so on. And I'm kind of looking at the ZPT period of time, right? And that's going to take us 80 years, a really hard slog to transform, in my opinion, humanity. We'll get a big chunk of it done in 15 years, but it's going to be a big effort. And many of us will find ourselves invigorated by that effort in the latter half of next year and into 26 as we start doing the building, right? The build out of it all. Yeah. Because we'll have been through the worst of the crash and we're going to say, okay, all right, screw it. This is happening. The space aliens are amenable to this. They'll aid us in some of this stuff. And as I say, I think it's going to be extra government, extra officialdom. and that the officialdom will be running around trying to figure out how they're going to slot themselves in to what's emerging out of humanity. But
this was the make-away civilization you were talking about.
Correct, right. Yeah. And this leads to sci-fi world. And in sci-fi world, we have lots of different forms of money, and the only currency that matters is your social presence. And so people would not be wealthy in money, they would be wealthy in social presence. It's a different sort of a concept, right? We'll still have money, but if you have free energy, you won't have as much need for that sort of thing, right? And sooner or later, we'll get into the building of replicators and all of these kind of cool things. This is what that's the half of it that Stephen Greer fears, okay, that can be weaponized, those kind of things. He's been in officialdom too long. He was an ER doctor, right? So he saw the worst of humanity because they were getting into trouble and ended up needing stitches and shit. But he's like government in that he has no faith in humanity, in my opinion, in humans, in individual humans. I don't think humans, given free energy, I cannot see any human, no matter how diluted by an ideology, given this free energy, that's gonna decide, okay, isn't gonna happen. You got a family in Gaza that's struggling, and you're given a little box that gives you all the electricity, and you can start doing all this kind of shit. You're just gonna say, to hell with Israel, we're off doing our own thing, right? That kind of a deal, right? You won't be necessarily seeking retribution for ancient kinds of ills. And so I think
just live and let live.
Correct. Like the Palestinians just want to grow their olive trees, So this is a kind of world we're in. And unfortunately, there are groups of people that, want to keep us back in the Kali Yuga and want to maintain control. And we have to be adults, and we have to recognize that there are these groups of people, and we have to deal with them. Perhaps the space aliens might be shoving moons around and stuff in order to alter the resonance so that we don't have such a long road to hoe,
Right. Well, here's to being cautiously optimistic. Let me play this clip from Carla, and then let's give away some gifts here to the 12,000 or so live watching the show.
I'm Carla from Ascension Organites, and I am watching Fighting the Blue Chickens with Jean-Claude and Clif High. As a special thank you to all our loyal Beyond Mystic viewers, I would like to offer you a 30% discount on our special edition Beyond Mystic Shungite pendants. When placed on your body, the Shungite properties work to protect you against harmful EMF. You might just need it for the alien invasion. Go to ascensionorganites.com and use coupon code BLUECHICKENS to get your Shungite pendants today. Now back to the show.
Thank you, Carla. Appreciate that. I had too much fun with this today, with the title, of course, the poster. Thank you so much. Both of you are great sports. Jordan, if you don't know how this works, I'll give you the first dibs here on the audience members. We're about 9 or 10,000 here on Rumble, another 2,500 or so here on Twitter. We typically ask a question that would result in a one-word kind of answer from the audience members here to give away some of these prizes. So we're going to give away 2 of those Shungite pendants here today. What would you ask the audience members, Jordan?
Oh, any question ever?
Could be a person, a place, a date, a movie, trivia, like anything you think would be cool for the show.
And it can only have a one-word answer.
Something, easy enough that they can type in on mass in the show.
Oh, shoot. You're putting me on the spot, man.
Do you want me to ask Cliff first and come back to you?
Yeah. Come back to me. I got to think about that.
All right.
I didn't know we were going to do this.
All right. No,
yeah, sure. This is real easy. Okay, guys. So what am I protecting myself by wearing Shungite? What am I protecting myself from?
Okay. Let me bring up the live chat here while we wait for that to populate. Of course, you guys know the answer to Clif High's question there. Please join us on beyondmystic.net. There you can find the schedule here for the week. We've got about 24 shows this week in production. You'll be able to join me again this evening at 8 o'clock Eastern for the next edition of the Beyond the News. And also take note of the conference page here for March of 2025. We've just added links to the hotel room reservations for you guys holding tickets for that. There's still some tickets available for you guys if you want to join us there in person. And if you cannot join us in person here with the general admission pass, you can join us online here for the online streaming for the 3 days here, and take note of all of the amazing guest speakers and keynote speakers joining us there in March for the Woo Beginning Conference. Cliff, let me know when to stop the live chat here to pick a winner.
Do it now.
Big grasshopper. I love that. How appropriate for the Kung Fu Master to talk about grasshoppers. There you go, man. You're the winner of one of these Shungite pendants here. Just go to beyondmystic.net, top of the page there, and hit that support button. Let us know you're the winner, and we'll have Carla send that out to you. Jordan, what do you think? Question for the audience members.
My question is, what is your weapon of choice to fight the Elohim?
Ooh, okay. So write that down to me on the side chat here, just to make sure I know what you're talking about. I think I do.
Oh, I need like a specific answer?
Yeah. No, we need a specific answer. Okay, so hold on, folks. We'll reframe the question then. We need a specific answer of something you're alluding to so that we can pick a winner. What do you think?
All right. What is your firearm of choice to take out an Elohim 100 yards away?
Okay, I'm just going to add precision to that. Clif High has it in his webbot data, and farmers are using this particular weapon. So find me the farmer's weapon in the fields against UFOs, and then I'll try to pick one of your winners. I know for sure some people know.
Yeah, somebody will get that one.
Okay, let me just start. Hold on. Did I just see it? Hold on.
Probably
there
a
you go.
question.
Give me the truth. 1, 2, 3. Oh, sorry, you're not on screen. Give me the truth. So congratulations again. Go to that website there. Leave us a comment or an email, and we'll get that to you. So I'm going to both ask you words of wisdom here in this crazy period of time. We're all together fighting these blue chickens, and that entails a lot of change, and the rate of change also is increasing, and that's causing a lot of consternation in the audience members, a lot of fear and uncertainty moving forward. Given all that, what are your tips and tools, Jordan, here to navigate this crazy world?
Yeah, you said change. Change is important. Being able to change your mind about people. Clif and I used to hate each other like 6 years ago, but
I never hated you.
You never hated me. You did block me on Twitter.
I got annoyed at you. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, but change is important, right? And also being able to control your emotions. It's super important with critical thinking. Super important with not getting sucked into influencers on the internet. You've never met these people before. We're just faces on screens, right? Maybe people on the internet, these influencers are great people. Maybe they suck. But at the end of the day, the people that suck, they're trying to put on this face of, look at me, I'm an awesome person. I know so much stuff. So we need to be so careful with who we decide to give our energy to online. There's a lot of energy vampires out there that are trying to suck your time, suck your money. So it's so important to keep your discernment cap on. Be very careful with your energy and your emotion and who you get invested into, and especially if you're giving money to people. And just make sure that who you're following and what you're believing from them is backed by something reputable, backed by legitimate evidence. So as we go forward, it's going to be more important than ever to hone our critical thinking, because we have so many people breaking away from the mainstream media, which is great, but then they're just hopping onto social media and still getting brainwashed with the same tactics by people on social media.
They're replacing one guru for another guru instead of using their own internal discernment. Great, that's a great point, Jordan.
Exactly.
What do you have working? What do you have coming up here on Jordan Sager on your premium on the Rumble channel here? What's your focus moving forward, Jordan?
Focus moving forward is pretty much 3 things: just taking a look at the news, diving into health-related subjects, and UFOs coming back into the picture. So I'm going to get back to reporting on UFOs and suppressed energy technologies. Those are my three main topics that I like to have interest in and like to dig into. So we'll be working on Rumble videos. I have a health brand called Conscious Strength where I have some supplements on there. So you can go check out that brand, and then Substack articles, shit posting on Twitter, all that good stuff.
Very good. Thank you so much, Jordan, for all your time today. Folks, please do go join Jordan on his Rumble channel. You'll see the links in the description box below. Clif, same question for you. What's the focus moving forward here on your Substack? Any new angles of attack here dealing with these crazy change? And what do you say to the audience here on how to tackle these changes?
I'm really interested in Persinger in the micro or pico-Newton level of electrical interaction it takes to alter humans. All kinds of potential there. So I'm going to be delving into that. I want to just say that if it's going to be really rough for humanity for a number of years. There'll be good things coming. As a member of humanity, in order to make yourself less of an annoyance to everybody else, I'm concentrating on myself and getting my body fit to withstand what's coming on in, and also withstand the energies because of all the chemtrails and all the other goofy shit coming in, and not to be a burden on the rest of the social order. And I say this phrase, and everybody, I think they misunderstand it to a certain extent, but I say practiced armed defense daily. Okay, it doesn't matter what the arm is, whether it's a pistol or a knife or nunchucks or something. The reason to do this is not only do you tone your body and your mind, but it alters the presence that you have in the world. And so if I walk as a victim, so shall I become. If I walk as a conqueror, so shall I be seen. Okay, and no one's going to fuck with a conqueror. But if you walk like you're a victim because you don't train in armed defense daily, because you don't have that attitude, you don't have that centered key feeling, then you make yourself more likely to be a victim, right? And so that's just my thing here, is that we all need to do this for ourselves in order to be better for our family, better for the social order, better to meet the challenges that are coming to us, right? Whether we like it or not. So, so my first thoughts are never money or currency, right? My first thoughts are never to the social order. My first thoughts are to myself in the environment in which I find myself. And if I'm settled in myself, the rest of it sorts itself out.
Your presence in the ever-present now. Thank you so much, Cliff. I really appreciate that. Thank you both, gentlemen, for all of your time here today, your efforts and your knowledge to have this amazing conversation with the audience members. Thank you to all of you watching today. Please hit that like button and subscribe for more of this channel. And again, we'll see you tonight at 8 o'clock Eastern for the next edition of the Beyond the News. Love you guys. I'm Jean-Claude Beyond Mystic. Take care, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
Bye.